Welcome to this edition of Access Together. These shows are made possible through the combined efforts of Shelby County Schools and GHS-TV. The shows are hosted by the members of the community and utilize the staff and facilities of Germantown High School. If you would like to watch our live stream or get more information about these shows, log on to our website, ghstv.org. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the following presentation.
Welcome to Let's Talk Money. My name is Kelly Bolton, and this is my co-host, Harvey Cook. We thank you for tuning in as we have the distinct pleasure of hosting the community's foremost business and community leaders. We're honored to have with us today Justin Miller. He's CEO and founder of Slingshot Memphis. Justin has taken an innovative approach to help donors maximize their impact on charities. Slingshot is making a lasting positive impact on our community. So without further ado, please join us as we welcome Justin to our programming. So Justin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your background and Slingshot and kind of how you got into this.
Yeah, so native Memphian, born and raised. I've moved away a few times, but I've always come back. Went to elementary school here, high school, and went directly to seminary after undergrad. I actually went to several schools undergrad, studied in Europe for a while, finished at the University of Memphis with a degree in history and psychology, with the intent of going straight to seminary, not to be in the formal ministry, but to be a counselor and a teacher. So after I finished my degree in Atlanta, came back to Memphis, and I was a teacher, a counselor, an administrator for an independent school here in Memphis. Did that for about 6 or 7 years and really enjoyed that work. Came to this proverbial crossroads where it was either going to be head of school, either here in Memphis or somewhere else, or do something different. I chose the latter. I started in the investment world with Raymond James, or Morgan Keegan at the time, who is now Raymond James. Loved that work with the intent of leaving at some point to get back into the nonprofit sector, which I did about 2 years ago. When I came back to Memphis, even though I grew up here and was involved in various charities, I had trouble personally. My wife and I had trouble allocating our resources in what we felt like was the most meaningful way. So we tried to get way better at that as a family. And when I came back to Memphis, I thought, you know what, if I had trouble doing that, maybe other people need some support in that arena. So I created a job called a giving strategist. And what I did essentially is I created at least what I considered to be a diverse portfolio of nonprofit organizations that were doing really good work in the city, whether it was a food kitchen or a shelter or an after-school program. And once I identified these orgs that were doing really good work and needed extra additional support to continue their efforts, I started to engage individuals, families, businesses to help them figure out exactly how they could give away their resources in a meaningful way. And it worked. I was pretty good at it. I worked really hard. And I identified that there is a legitimate need for people to have someone stand in the gap for them, to give away their resources better. So what I would do is I would work with my clients, if you will, and I would constantly work with these nonprofit orgs because their needs are ever changing. And I would remind my clients the type of impact that their resources were generating. Mm-hmm. And I loved it, and it was meaningful. And it got a lot of people engaged into this work that would not have been engaged otherwise. It certainly created a lot of resources for beneficiaries that needed it. But it wasn't a very scalable model. I was able to raise a bunch of money, and it was great, but Memphis is the second most generous city in the country. And we're also the poorest in almost every demographic. And so where I kept thinking about my own return on impact, I thought, I don't know if this really is a systems mover. So what I started to do is do more research. What other platforms out there could accelerate this work? And after a long time, I landed on Robin Hood Foundation, which is out of New York City. It's New York's largest poverty-fighting organization. Coincidentally, it's started by Paul Tudor Jones, native Memphian, one of the most famous investors in the world. About 30 years ago, he started to ask the question, how can I make my charitable contributions go even further? He made some large contributions, the story goes, that had very minimal impact in the world. And he landed on the idea that, you know what, I'm not really good at giving money away, but I'm really good at making it. Maybe we should start applying that type of logic, investment principles, onto the charitable giving landscape to steward our resources in the most meaningful way. And Robin Hood has been going really well for 30 years. They've actually been replicated in San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. And so that's where I landed on, hey, if it's working well in these other cities, maybe it's going to work well in Memphis.
Well, that's interesting. And maybe explain, for those people that don't know, what is that Robin Hood concept? I mean, we've all seen the movie, so I guess we can kind of make a good guess, but maybe you could explain it.
No, it's funny. I think the movie, so you think about Robin Hood stealing from the rich to giving to the poor.
Right.
And I think Paul Tudor Jones and his crew of people in Connecticut and New York almost were taking a jab at themselves with that name.
Right.
But essentially what it means is whether somebody's giving $1 or literally $1 billion, giving to good programs isn't enough. In Memphis, we have 2,500 to 4,000 nonprofits, which on one hand is great. The need is vast and deep. On the other hand, our community has very limited resources. And in my humble opinion, instead of spreading it around like peanut butter, we've got to identify those programs, those interventions, those people that have the highest impact per dollar cost so that we can, pardon my investment language, double down on those efforts. And in my humble opinion, there's a lot of third-party research that suggests until we do that, we will continue being the most generous and the most poor.
I can completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
Yes,
and so
it makes perfect sense.
And one other thing about Robin Hood, what they do is they have, it's taken them 30 years to generate a portfolio of nonprofits, 200 nonprofits right now that they support. Now, Robin Hood has access to a lot of hedge fund money. Last year alone, they raised $167 million and gave it all away to the 200 different organizations, which is great. But what they're going to tell you is that the rigor and the accountability, the metrics that they help these nonprofits use to measure their impact is the real value add. So in addition to having 200 organizations in their portfolio, they literally have thousands of organizations outside of it trying to get in. Or at a minimum, learning from best practices of what they might be able to replicate. And so Robin Hood, I think, has single-handedly raised the level of excellence in the nonprofit sector in New York City. And let me clarify, Robin Hood and Slingshot are just focused on fighting poverty. So there are many organizations, the arts, just to name one example, that need to be funded. We need to fund them. They would never be in Slingshot's portfolio, but that doesn't mean they're not needed for our city.
Well, that's great. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we return, we're going to continue our discussion with Justin Miller, CEO of Slingshot Memphis.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today I'm just an aluminum can, but one day I could be a stadium.
If you don't fix them, sparks from dragging tow chains could cause a wildfire, and that could be scary. Smokey. Only you can prevent wildfires.
You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Money. If you're just tuning in, I'm Kelly Bolton, and this is my co-host, Harvey Cook. Today we've been talking with Justin Miller. He's CEO and founder of Slingshot Memphis. We live in a great city, but there are also many great needs. And Justin is one of the people of Slingshot, and Slingshot is striving to make solutions to improve the quality of life for those living in poverty. Justin, thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Justin, you mentioned that y'all do a lot of metrics, a lot of measuring. How do you measure the impact that these programs are having in Memphis and on these people?
It's a great question. That's kind of the core part of our work. One thing that's similar to Robin Hood, we not only measure outcomes related to poverty, we monetize those outcomes. So we put a dollar-weighted value on an outcome. I'll give you just one easy example. Education is certainly one means to break the cycle of generational poverty. So if someone were to graduate high school, they are going to, on average, earn $7,500 more a year for the rest of their work lifetime. You can monetize that. It's pretty simple, right? And so that's just one of many examples that we might measure. Another thing we measure where it gets a little complicated and I think in a very interesting, important way is this word we use called the counterfactual. So there might be an organization in Memphis that says we have a 100% graduation rate. And that might be right, but my hunch is it's probably not. And I don't think people are being malicious when they tout those statistics. But I'll give you a good example. So if you have an amazing organization that is an after-school program, and it requires a parent or a mentor or an aunt to get that young man or woman to that organization three times a month for years, and then that organization is going to say that they have a 100% graduation rate. What we would eventually say is, well, let's think about what if not that organization. If you have a parent or an aunt or a mentor that gets you 3 times a month to that organization, there is a whole nother system of support that suggests many of those students would graduate high school even without that particular intervention. And that doesn't mean what that program is doing isn't amazing, but what it does mean is we need to isolate their impact. We need to figure out really what value add are they having in the life of those children to get them to graduate high school. Otherwise, we have a lot of organizations not really fully understanding exactly how they're changing a life.
Yeah, that makes sense. So really you're just saying, would they have graduated high school anyway?
That's
and
right.
you're not measuring the kids that didn't even get to the after-school program.
That's right.
And Justin, you mentioned earlier on that Memphis is one of the most, I guess, philanthropic cities in the country. And I've heard you say that before, and it really surprised me, and it probably does other people. Why is that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different reasons why, but I'll tell you why I think. So according to the Chronicle of Philanthropy in 2015, we were second most generous city in the country, right behind Salt Lake City. Memphis is unique. I mean, I'll just kind of use my own personal narrative. Like a lot of people, I have the opportunity to do what I do in most any place. And matter of fact, I've lived in great places. In New York City, my family and I spent a couple of years, a few years ago, living in our dream spot on the beach on 30A, where our kids were in school. And we came back to this place. And there's something about what I often say, this beautiful and broken city that merits our investment. And there's just so many people that I know that are interested in investing in this place and invested in solving problems. And it's a great opportunity. Our hearts are in the right place. Our pocketbooks, at least in aggregate, are certainly illustrative of our interest in affecting change.
Well, tell me, for example, if I came to you and said I've got X dollars that I want to do something with, then what happens from that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the answer is this. We have our board of directors, myself included, and a few strategic seed funders who have covered all of our operating costs. So for us to do all of this data work, and we do this at no cost to our nonprofit partners. We help alongside their staff measure and monetize their work so they can do it even better. all of that's paid for. So if you came to me and said, Justin, I've got $1, or Justin, I have $10 million, 100% of every part of that dollar would go directly to our impact fund. And that impact fund is what we use to distribute to our nonprofit partners to help scale them out to do more good.
So you're really working as an intermediary. You're helping the nonprofit be more, actually have a bigger impact. But then you can also help me, the donor, get the money to the right place. But I'm not paying for your services because you've got somebody else that has funded that?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Actually, you said it very well. I'd add, the only thing I would add is that we are helping organizations completely maximize, through our data, maximize impact with their current resources first. We are working currently with a nonprofit organization, like a lot of nonprofits, that does about 7 different things. GED prep, financial literacy, job training, job placement, anger management, etc. After our work with them, they're learning that 2 of those 7 things are driving 90% of their impact. So, if they start pivoting more energy and resources towards those 2 things, what we're learning is they're going to quintuple their return on investment without even adding more dollars. So it's a long-winded way of saying not only, you're correct, 100% of your dollars goes directly to these orgs, we're ensuring that those dollars go further than anybody else.
That's very interesting, very interesting.
Justin, there's got to be dozens and dozens of charities in Memphis that want to partner with you. What can you tell us some that you're partnering with, and what are the criteria that you use?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So we have been a 501c3 for 1 year, for just about 1 year now. We've been building this platform for a little bit longer, but we're brand new. Matter of fact, we've only been fully operational since January 1, about 200 days. So what we decided to do is have 4 organizations in our first cohort. We have also 4 buckets that they fit nicely into. In our jobs economic security bucket is Advance Memphis. In our early childhood bucket is Nurse Family Partnership. In our stabilization bucket is Purdue Center of Hope. And in our education bucket is Communities in Schools. All of this is on our website where you can actually click on a link and go learn more about them. But those are our first 4 orgs. And matter of fact, we're in the process of expanding our portfolio in 2018. And you're right, a lot of organizations do, and people funding organizations say, well, how can we be involved in this? And what we're working toward is building more tools to scale our work. We want to work with as many people as possible and raise as much money as possible on their behalf.
Well, great. We're going to take another short break. When we return, we're going to finish our conversation with Justin Miller, so please stay tuned.
We'd do anything for kids. Yet 1 in 6 children in the U.S. struggle with hunger. Help end childhood hunger near you. Learn how at feedingamerica.org.
It's a program that feeds off of excellence. We have chamber choir, which is an elite ensemble composed of 16 to 18 singers. Then chorale, it's a large ensemble of roughly 50 singers. We have a women's chorus. When they come in here, they have the chance to sing. And when we sing, it releases endorphins and it makes us happy. So to give students an environment where they can be happy, where they can move on from things that are going on in their life. That's a challenging thing to do.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Money. We're honored to have with us Justin Miller, CEO and founder of Slingshot Memphis. So with just a little time left, we're going to jump back into our exciting discussion. Justin, when we took a break there for a moment, I was asking you about the quantity of charities in the city. And as a donor myself, it's overwhelming to me. If I decide I want to make an impact, where do I go to make the impact? Because you do want to go to an organization where there's not a lot of overhead and red tape, and you're getting straight to the root of the organization's focus. But with so many charities, it seems to me that there's a lot of redundancy. I mean, what's your thought?
I would say that there's a lot of room for more efficiencies. Even within organizations, I just gave you a great example of just one org. But when you think about multiple orgs or zip codes or neighborhoods or certainly citywide, and a city as broken as we are as it relates to poverty, there's a lot of room for improvement, which is great. It's a great opportunity for us to rethink how we fund things, to rethink how we create plans to affect change. As I mentioned earlier, there are many organizations that are doing similar things. There's many ways that I think through more data, through more transparency, we can figure out what are those things that have the most demonstrable evidence of working, and how can maybe other orgs fold into that work. Or, the opposite is true. We might identify something small in Fraser that the return on investment is off the charts, and maybe that needs to be replicated in every neighborhood in the city. And so I think it works both ways.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, are there other services and support that you give to charities that we had talked about?
Yeah, there's been some unintended benefits of this work. We're kind of data nerds. I have on staff with me, I have a guy who has a PhD in economics. He's a genius. Matter of fact, I think he's been on this show before a while back. I have another guy who's from Gabon, Africa, who, among other things, went to MIT, Harvard, and Yale. One of the smartest human beings you've ever met, and we recruited him to come.
He went to all three.
All three, and he has social skills, which is kind of
wow.
bizarre.
I'd love to meet this guy.
He's great. You should. And Memphis is very fortunate to have him and my other colleague here working on this. And one of the things we didn't really imagine is through this data, we're building morale of the organizations we're working with. And there's an organization that has been fighting poverty in a variety of ways for a long time. And one of their staff members told us not long ago, they said, you know what? We've known we've been making a difference. Now we know we're making a difference. So we're able to provide the same type of data that you probably provide your clients. Quarterly updates, return on investment, internal rate of return, payback period. So we think of ourselves, if we're going to make an investment in Google, we're sort of overlaying that same construct on the nonprofit sector here. So that's been an unintended impact, but it could be helping them build surveys, helping them with data. It's across the board.
Well, how could somebody donate? I mean, if they're listening like I am, I'm thinking, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So if somebody wants to give, how do they do that?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, what we're really interested, this, in my humble opinion, doesn't fully work. It doesn't really put us in a position to recondition the charitable giving landscape unless we have community buy-in. So I have people who are giving $500,000, and I have a TFA teacher who's on a very limited budget, gives us $10 every month. She has a recurring gift online. The quick answer is if you go to our website, there's a tab that says donate. Our website tells a lot more about our mission and approach. It tells more about the organizations we're working with, our partner expansion process, et cetera. But we really do. We need as many people involved in this work as possible.
Thank you.
You've told us about a couple of members of your staff. Tell us a little bit more about your staff and also your board of directors.
Yeah. So an amazing board of directors. When we first started this, Robin Hood, because of Paul Tudor Jones, and you know what, I can say this on this show now, Paul Tudor Jones, people have been trying to recruit him to be involved in his home city for a long time, and as of 2 weeks ago, he agreed to be one of our ex officio board directors, so he's going to be officially involved in our work.
That's
yeah,
fabulous.
Well, it's a big win for Slingshot. It's a really big win for our city, and especially for our most underserved neighbors. So I'm excited about that. And the reason I bring that up is because of Paul, Robin Hood has rolled out the red carpet and has really helped us on the data front and otherwise, and they have served as consultants formally. So have the other the replicants of Robin Hood in D.C. and Chicago and in San Francisco. They're our consultants. So they've been doing this work for a long time, so there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's really helped accelerate our work. Our board of directors is phenomenal. All of them and their bios are on our website as well. Harriet McFadden is our board chair, among other things. She started the Children's Museum here in Memphis. Just a long-term philanthropist, activist here in the city, and she and our other board directors are really guiding us to scale this out.
That's great. Well, I don't know how much more time we have, but I don't think we've got a lot. This is an opportunity. Hopefully you can get some information out to more people in the community.
Yeah.
What would you like people to do that are watching the show? Obviously donate money. Can they give time?
Yeah, so we're really interested. There's actually a blurb also on our website about this. They can, not necessarily to Slingshot right now. What we're interested in doing is identifying those volunteer opportunities that have a legitimate high impact return in the fight against poverty. And so there's more on that on our website. But I would say another takeaway, even if people aren't going to invest through Slingshot, whether they're involved in a faith-based community or at a school or their own giving, for us to start rethinking how we allocate our resources. It's not enough to just fund good things. We've done that for a long time. We've got to fund those things that have the highest return in the fight per cost. If not, I think we're going to be in a very similar broken spot 20 years from now.
Justin, what are a few of the best charities in Memphis? Not best from doing the most good, but that meet your metrics of doing the most good.
Yeah. It's a great question, Harvey. There's so many. And if we had more bandwidth and if we weren't so new, we would have a large portfolio because there's so many great things happening in our city. I'll just talk a little bit about one or two in our current portfolio. There's a group called Communities in Schools. It's a nationwide model. They've been in Memphis for about 3 years. They're in our most under-resourced schools in Memphis, serving the most under-resourced students in those schools. Helping those students stay in school has a direct effect on the rest of their lives as it pertains to earnings and getting out of poverty. Again, you can read more about them on our website. Their ROI is off the charts, and we need them in every school in the city.
That's fabulous. Well, I wish we had a lot more time, but it's time that we close the show. Thank you. I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all very much for having me.
So we once again thank Justin Miller for being with us with Slingshot. And for more information about this great organization, you can check out their website at slingshotmemphis.org. For more information on our show, you can check us out on the web at GHS-TV.org, where we're streaming live 24 hours a day. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We hope you'll join us again next month on Let's Talk Money.